morning, everybody.
Hey, Tommy.
Tommy Williams. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
I'm okay.
We'll continue to do our series out of Gary, Indiana, because across the country, people are coming in and depicting Gary, Indiana as the city on the run. And what they do is they go in and find buildings that were never owned by the citizens of Gary. When I say citizens, the black population, they come in and depict these buildings and they put them all across the street, all across the country. And what they try to say is that the black people came in and destroyed the community. That is far from the truth. We're standing with a building right downtown Gary. And I know this building was always owned by white people. They were never owned by black people. They came in and they decided they wanted to move, and when they moved, they got financing from the banks, and they left these buildings and they never took care of them, and they depicted them as the black people destroyed those buildings. We're downtown Gary, Indiana right now. Here's a building right now that is totally destroyed, and it was left here many, many years ago. This was never our building. This kind of thing is taking place. Look at all the graffiti. I understand that there's a relationship between Indiana University and their art department where they go get money and have their students to do what they call artwork, and they put it on all these buildings. They do it at night. And the black people are not putting all this graffiti in. Those are people who come from out of town. They get sponsors and they do all of this thing. I understand in Jackson, Mississippi, a lot of this is done intentionally so they can come back and recapture the downtown area and get it at cheap prices. I'm Tommy Williams out of Gary, Indiana. This is my friend Brian Recker. We do this often, but we want you to know to go on Tomco, T-O-M-C-O, Tomco.tv, and we'll keep telling the story. The other story that I want to show you is how one of the major newspapers had one of the biggest offices in Northwest Indiana. They walked off and left the building, and that building is still standing, and it is depicted as a building that's on the ruin by the black people in Gary, Indiana. That's not true. There's another building across the street. It was a savings and loans. Of course, if you remember the story about the George Bush being involved in the savings and loan scandal, that building is still standing. We're going to show you that. Take care of your community. Begin to find out who owns these buildings and make them responsible for going back and take care of these buildings as they leave in these urban areas and depicted as black people destroying them. Brian, this building I want to show you was when Richard Gordon Hatcher became mayor. During that period of time, they created Maryville, Indiana. So when Richard Gordon Hatcher became mayor, a lot of these people did not want to be under the auspices of a black mayor. That has happened in a lot of other cities. But I want to point out to you, when they get financing from the federal government and state, and they begin to create these other cities and towns, they walk off and leave these buildings, and then they depict it as the black people have ruined those buildings. As you know, right down the street where there's the church, which is the first Methodist church in Gary, Indiana, was created by those people who were executives from the U.S. Steel. They walked off and left them. Then across the country, they want to depict it as the black people in these cities on the ruin. In Jackson, Mississippi right now, they have done that. But guess what they've done? They have allowed those buildings to deteriorate, but now they've come back and began to recapture them because of all of the highways access and all the other things that they have downtown Jackson, Mississippi. In Gary, Indiana, they're beginning to do the same thing. They're beginning to come back and take over the property where the urban communities are. Houses that sold for $8,000 40 years ago, now they're coming in and rehabbing those houses and selling them for $150,000. The financing is very, very important in these cities. When they decide they want to deteriorate property at a low value, come back to these cities where we got access to all the highways, all the railways, niggas ring. Now they want to take it back. But they depict it across the country and across the nation as black people destroying these communities. There's a whole plan for that. They can go to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and get money for housing and renovation and then sell them to black people at high prices. I'm Tommy Williams. I'm in Gary, Indiana. I'm with my friend Brian Ruckert, and we're talking about the whole urban issues of how they began to try to recapture the urban community, and they depict it as a city on the runs because they want to recapture this community. So what I want you to do, hit the subscribe button, so that we can continue to bring you all of these things about urban issues. I'm in Gary, Indiana. I'm Dr. Tommy Williams, and I want to thank you. Hit the subscribe button. Thank you.